Thanks for sticking with it and for being here for what is kind of my favorite subject, which is learning Mishnah and learning Talmud. Thank you and Yasher Koch to Neil Litt, who put on a beautiful program in Rabbi Goldenberg's memory last night. Last night? No, 2 nights ago. Last night was politics. Yeah. So it was so interesting to be at that program because it was, everyone I read in college and rabbinical school on the actual teaching, and then also a good colleague and friend of mine, Lenny Gordon and Lori Lefkowitz. So it was great to see them. But the teaching was beautiful.
Upper right corner more.
So we are going to tonight. The way I structured this is so that you will feel like you want to just jump right back in, and if you can, you'll take Neil's class during the day. We're gonna keep learning, but to learn for its own sake. One of you was talking, maybe at that night and in general, Torah Lishma, learning for its own sake means just being in the place where I don't need to know the outcome. I need to be part of a conversation with not just a teacher, but as we said, with a study partner. So the first week, I gave you a little bit of history, and I also recommended Rabbi Goldenberg, Zichron Livracha's chapter in that great book, Back to the Sources. If you don't own Back to the Sources, buy it. We got to hear the author the other night, but I feel like to be an educated Jew, having that book on your shelf is wonderful because it's short, articulate, eloquent essays about our sources, our Jewish sources. So I think you'll probably get on Amazon for not that much. It's worth owning as opposed to just borrowing it from a library. I mean, I don't usually say that anymore because we can borrow books, we can put them on our Kindles. That's one you want to own. By the way, I feel that way about one other book, which is Torah Min HaShamayim, or Heavenly Torah, by Aspaklaria Shel Hadorot, Heavenly Torah by Rabbi Dr. Abraham Joshua Heschel, and translated into English by Dr. Rabbi Gordon Tucker. I feel like if you want to really understand the gestalt of the rabbis, that's the book you read. And you read it a page a week or something. Like it's dense, it's hard and good. It shouldn't be your first Heschel book. The Sabbath should be, but it should certainly, for those of you who are advanced learners, Heavenly Torah should be the gift that you give yourself. I think when I bought it, I think it was like around $75. So it's not an inexpensive purchase, but one well worth it.
It's in paperback now.
It is? Wow. Okay. Baruch Hashem. Good. So the first week we did a little history and we studied that opening Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. And the reason I brought that, anyone remember Moshe Kibel Torah Sinai? Moses received the Torah at Mount Sinai and passed it down to this one and that one and that one. Anyone like, why that? Why did I start with that one? Yeah, Sally, you want to jump in?
It shows both the authority and also in an ironic way, the lack of authority.
Exactly. It showed that they needed to prove their authority. It's almost like the lady doth protest too much if they have to tell us why they have authority, but they do. So I brought that, and then I brought the beginning of brachot, and it's just like a beautiful discussion about what Shema and why do you, not why, but when do you say the Shema, which brings up the question of why that? Why is that the first place they're going? And so then we learned some other Mishnayot. I wanted to give you a sampling of just the breadth, not the depth, but the breadth. So we learned a Mishnah last week from each of 5 out of 6 Masechta Seders, orders. I did not do Taharot. I didn't do the stuff about, I did Taharot. I did something from Mikvah. I didn't do Kodashim. I didn't do the stuff about sacrifices. Someday, not yet. And what I wanted to go to next is for you to have in depth. So an entire chapter, but I wanted to do a chapter that I think that even if you've never studied Mishnah before, you'll be familiar with this chapter. So how many of you have been to, I don't know, 50 Passover Seders in your life? 60, 70, 80? Well, wait a second. If you count all the model Seders, if you have kids, all the model Seders you had to sit through, I mean,
Are you asking about just in 1 year or, more general?
exactly, right. So Seder is something most Jews, and thank God our Jews, are familiar with. And so that's why there were two go-to chapters. I'm giving you my process of talking this over with a good friend of mine who's a Talmud professor. No, he's not a Talmud professor anymore. He has a PhD in Talmud, he's a Hillel director at Harvard. And I said to him, his name's Rabbi Jonah Steinberg, and he also teaches at the Kabbalah Institute. I said to Jonah, okay, here are the options: the first chapter of Brachot or the 10th chapter of Psachim. And we both said 10th chapter of Psachim because it's something that we can all relate to. So if you've studied the 10th chapter of Psachim, the last chapter of Psachim, I apologize, but I don't, because you can always study Mishnah again and again. And at the very end, I include the first piece of Gemara on this as well, the first piece of Talmud. So I have this handout for you, and I want to say that I know who I'm talking to. And so I did go through and redo the translation to make it as gender inclusive as I could. But know that this is not a gender inclusive text in any way. That actually, when I have written ancestors, they didn't mean that, the writers of this, because they were really speaking to a male audience, but okay, I'm not. That said, I do think that when we stop and study the laws that the rabbis put in place to protect women and all other classes that didn't have full rights, they did a pretty good job in it and continue to do a pretty good job in it. Okay, so it is a week before Passover in your house, and what are you doing to prepare? Jump in, anyone.
Bringing up the dishes from the basement.
Yes, yes, that's what I'm doing. Anyone else? Anyone covering their countertops or having a discussion about covering their countertops?
Yeah.
Yeah, covering your countertops or not, what kind of surface. And then there's the who is going to the kosher butcher and what you're buying. And the most important part, who are you inviting? And I think an even more important part, who can you get away with not inviting, right? Which one of the relatives or friends is like, makes your Seder not good, so you want to find a way for them to not come. We actually, at some point in our family's life, we told the really, really secular folks, I didn't do this, my father of blessed memory, told some of the cousins, you're welcome to come late just for dinner, or you're welcome to come a different night and we'll make you dinner, but you can't come on time and ask when we're eating. That's a no-go.
I thought that was one of the questions.
Yeah, what time is dinner?
Right.
By the way, as one of my Seder things, which we'll actually learn about in tonight, when do you start eating at your Seder? As you can tell, I love Seder. When do you start eating at your Seder?
Right at the start.
Who said that?
Got to keep people from being too hungry.
Yeah, so what do you
You
feed
can
them?
talk forever.
Right, what do you feed them, Rob?
Eggs.
Eggs, some people do eggs, right? Anyone else?
Celery.
Yeah, we do full out salatim. Every kind of salad we can put together that comes from things that would be karpas, and a vegetable soup. And as Rob said, everything so that by the time they get to, so they're never going to say, when are we eating? They're always eating. I mean, that means last year I was at Friends. We did it in the backyard, and there were 5 different families there, and we all had our own tables. And at 2 a.m, I said, I gotta go because I'm leading shul tomorrow. So I like a long Seder where you sing a lot and where you talk a lot. I'm sure you do as well. Where'd that Seder come from? Well, let's find out. So I'm gonna read this to you so that we hear. Well, actually, is there anyone who would like to read the Hebrew? I know we have other Hebrew readers. Anyone who wants to read the Hebrew so everyone hears it? Okay, I'm gonna do it. It's not a test. Oh, let's do a bracha together first. Thank you, God, for allowing us to study Torah together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu לעסוק בדברי תורה, לעסוק בדברי Torah. And that tune, I think I mentioned before, was written by cantor Ari Priven, who's the cantor at BJ in New York. Okay, so I'm going to read because I want you to hear the cadence of it. And I also, one thing that we didn't really talk about is that Mishnah was memorized. Mishnah was a spoken art. In fact, we know it's called the oral Torah. And so there would be people whose job it would be to repeat it and repeat it. So I'm going to read it. Arvei psachim samuch lemincha. Lo yochal adam ad shetachshach. Afilu ani b'Yisrael. Lo ya'achel ad sheyashev. V'lo yiftachu lo me'arba kosot shel yayin v'afilu min hatamhui. Who will read it in English? By the way, we're going to do this one together, and then the next two we're going to break up into chavrutot, and then we'll come back. Who could read it in English all together for us?
Can I ask you a question beforehand?
Sure.
Why did it have to be oral? Because at that point in time, there was, writing. They had the means to do that.
So they did have the means to do it. What I understand from the history of it, I could be wrong, but from my understanding, is though they had the means, not everyone had the ability to own a text. And so people would memorize it, and it was short. And so they could memorize it. It had more to do with there not being, look, once there's a printing press, right? Once we get to the 1500s, everything changes. And now because of online, everything changes again. But this was a time where parchment was expensive and not everyone could not only get it, but not everyone could read. Okay, and so you'll see that Mishnah, one of the things about Mishnah is that the words are short. They're not the words, the sentences are short. They're kind of easy to remember. Okay, mincha is the time of the afternoon service, otherwise the time of the afternoon sacrifice. Or as I say now, the time for my Shabbos nap. So who would like to read? Rob, are you reading?
I'm willing to read, but only if you'll answer another question.
If I can, I don't know if I know it, but yeah.
There's these 3 dots at the beginning of the second line in Hebrew. What's that about?
Oh my God, that's me. So I took this from an online source and it wouldn't format right.
Okay.
So this is like, why does your mother cut the pot roast at the end of the pot roast off?
Right.
So it wasn't formatting right on my computer. So instead of doing it as a section, I did line by line. Because the formatting kept messing up. So I wanted you to have it in the right order. Okay.
So those dots are extraneous.
They are, but if you made up a drash about them, I would be interested in hearing it.
Well, I think it's very important that there's no dots and then 3 dots and then 2 dots, but
yes,
I'll leave that aside. So mincha, we need to know, is the time of the afternoon service.
Yeah.
And I guess the bold-faced letters are what's the direct translation, and the not so bold-faced letters, a little hard for me to tell the difference, are the fill-ins.
Or the fill-ins, which I tried to redo. I reduced a lot because I think actually it's harder with the fill-ins, but okay, go ahead.
Yeah, you can sometimes they get carried away with the fill-ins. On the eve of Passover, adjacent to mincha time, a person may not eat until dark. Even the poorest of Jews should not eat the meal on Passover night until she or he reclines. And the distribution of charity should not give a poor person less than 4 cups of wine. And this halakha applies even if the poor person is one of the poorest members of society and receives his or her food from the soup kitchen.
Okay, so we're at the end of the book of Psachim. And what are they telling us? What do you actually do that day? So it's the afternoon. By the way, that is always a terrible day because I think as a foodie, you have to stop eating by like chametz at like 9 something in the morning or 10 in the morning, depending on how late it is. But you can't really eat, yontif food. What do you eat that day? So if you have a good answer for that, you can tell me another time. But it is true that it is a hard eating day. So let's go back. On the eve of Passover, which doesn't mean the night before, it means the day before. Right? Arvei Psachim here, it's kind of hard to understand. It's not Erev, the night before, it's actually the afternoon before. Mixed up with that, especially if you're looking at the Hebrew, right? On the eve of Passover doesn't mean at night, it means in the afternoon. Usually mincha, you can say around 12:31. So that's what time we're thinking about. You're thinking lunchtime at that time of year. At that time, a person may not eat until dark. Why? And this, I want you to think, and someone who hasn't answered yet, think, why can't you eat until dark?
Holiday hasn't started yet.
So I still need to eat.
You can't eat chametz. You have to have, is that a fence around the law again? You can't eat chametz, and you can't eat like matzah because you haven't started Pesach yet.
Well, so, okay, you can't eat chametz starting at like 10 something in the morning. There's the time at which in the morning I will publish it. I heard that not everyone sells their chametz here, but everyone's going to sell their chametz here this year. It's a good thing to sell your chametz to a non-Jew, and then it's all done. We're going to all give away our chametz to non-Jews who can use it. Maybe we'll even truck it down to the food pantry in JFCS. Okay. So,
But why can't you eat vegetables?
who just said that? Yeah, Michael, right. So why? Think about it. So Jane.
So that
Wait.
you're really eager to eat when it is time to eat.
Yes. Yeah, Andrew or Andy. Andrew, we're gonna go stay
Andy.
with Andy. Me too. I'm Andy as well. So we're gonna stay with that. But Jane, I want to go back to you for 1 second, which is we actually are told we have to stop eating chametz in the morning. There's a time, I'll publish it then. It's based on what time the sun goes up and down. But also, I'm going to sell your chametz for you, I hope, at some point early in the morning. I'm going to see maybe the mayor of Princeton will buy it from us this year. We'll see. So you can't eat chametz anymore. And you could be gifted chametz. So you can eat chametz that you don't own, but you can't really. So now it's a couple hours later. So you have from like 10:30 to 1 or something, 12:31 where you can eat. And then the Mishnah is saying, you don't eat. And you don't eat for the reason that we'll learn later, for the reason that Andy's saying, and you want to have an appetite, a te'avon for it. We'll learn that later, but it kind of does make sense, right? You know who it doesn't make sense for?
Children.
Correct. Who else?
People are already hungry.
What? One
I
at a
said, people who are already hungry.
people who may be hungry already or in need. That's why we're going to hear about the poor people. Today, we know it doesn't make sense for someone who's diabetic. We know that. But you know what else it doesn't make sense for? Who's cooking the brisket? It doesn't make sense for the people actually making the meal. And this wasn't written for the people making the meal. I'm glad that makes Sally smile. It's true. You don't cook that huge a meal without tasting. I'm sure everyone here is part of the cooking crew. And right, Suzanne, you got to taste as you go. So this makes that hard. The men who wrote this weren't tasting. Someone else was cooking their food. Someone else was actually pouring their wine, which we'll see in a moment as well. Okay. May not eat until dark. And it's Andy's has the answer that we think they'll come to. What's next? Even the poorest of Jews should not eat a meal on the Passover night until he or she reclines. What do they mean until he or she reclines?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, but say who it is first. I can't see.
Oh, sorry. Frankly,
It's Frank. Hi.
I get the sense that not eating prior to the Seder beginning is an emulation of our ancestors' escape. They weren't eating while they were running.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. They were going in a hurry. Although I want to say something about that. So I have a spiritual practice, which is that for one of my Seders, you know, how people make it as their most complicated meal. I actually think it should be the quickest meal for just the reason you're saying. I think it should be a simple meal because they left in a haste and couldn't prepare. So it's interesting. I agree with what you're saying. It's beautiful, beautiful to add into. Anyone else?
What about the fast of the Bechorim? That's not mentioned here.
Well, it's mentioned before. We didn't get there, but we will. I mean, frankly, they're assuming most people aren't going to fast because there's going to be a siyum. There's going to be some way to not fast, or they'll fast, but you know, there's only one first in every family.
Yes.
And half of them are girls. So, which I consider girls today are women obligated, but they didn't. So on the eve of Passover, adjacent to the time of Mincha, a person may not eat until dark. Beautiful understanding, Frank, that maybe it's to say like, you know, you're nervous, you're too busy eating, you're too busy to eat, you're getting things ready. I do find that many people before COVID used to have like 20, 30, 40 people at their Seder. 10, there's a lot to get done. So it is kind of nerve-wracking to get it together. Okay. Even the poorest Jew should not eat the meal on the Passover night until she or he reclines. What's the point of the reclining here? What's that code for? Yes,
Starting the Seder.
Your table.
oh,
The
Jane,
Seder, yeah.
yeah. The rabbis tell us to recline on our left, like free Greek people were able to do at a symposium. So they're saying, even a poor person, why do you think they needed to put that line in, Michael? Because you had the earlier comment about it.
Or
Yeah.
you.
You're mute.
Oh, Michael Leopold, because he made the earlier comment about the poor people.
I think it's a way of saying that even the poorest should be treated just like everybody else. So the rich people get to lean, you have to wait for the poor people to lean too, makes everything equal.
Everything equal. It's so interesting. I don't know if you have people serving, right? This is like the one this is the holiday where you may want to have help, but you shouldn't have Jewish help. You know, to hire people. This Seder is for everyone, right? Every Jew we want to find a Seder for. Okay, but why should they not be able? Why would you wait? Even the poorest of Jews should not eat the meal on Passover until they recline. This is just, think about it. Yeah, Rob.
I think reclining is a sign of being free and being of an equal status with others. And maybe the poorest of Jews doesn't always feel like he or she is of the equal status with others. And we're saying this person has to be given that equal status before the meal starts.
Absolutely. And it really, at the very beginning, reminds all of us that we are privileged, that we're able to make a Seder, that we're privileged, but that other Jew needs to feel that sense of being the free person as well. But there's another piece. Go to the very beginning. Even the poorest of Jews should not eat that meal on the Passover night until, meaning Passover night, they mean Erev Pesach. They mean after, the same time as the beginning of the Mishnah. They might be hungry. They might not have had a meal in the morning, right? This is not, they're saying, even if you didn't have the meal earlier in the day, you wait till at night, till you're celebrating. Interesting. Then we go on to a separate topic. Vafilu ani b'Yisrael lo yachal, vafilu yiftechu lo, okay, me'arba kosot. And those who distribute charity should not give a poor person, I know it's a double negative here, but should give a poor person enough for the 4 cups of wine. So what are they saying? It's a little bit, building on what you just said, Mike Leopold, someone else want to jump in? Yeah, Sally, if you want to go.
That the poor person should have the same ability to have a Seder as everyone else, to drink the 4 cups.
Right, and not to have a little bit of wine. There was a great philanthropist who I worked with years ago who wanted to help me get kids to camp. My first shul, there was some families of limited economic means, limited financial means. And what the guy said to me was, if camp costs $8,000 a year and they need another 1,000 to outfit the kids, so it's 9,000 a summer, and we give them a scholarship for 2,000, it's as if we've given them nothing. Because they're still not going to get to camp. Or in our case, Jewish education. Like, we have to think about what we give in our Passover baskets. It's interesting. I used to, as you know, run a food pantry, and we were very, very careful to give out the same thing to everyone every week, regardless of who they were, we didn't care what religion, but we also gave extra food on Passover, and specifically extra grape juice. Because of this mitzvah, it's not a symbolic thing. It's actually 4 cups of wine. So as you said, in order to feel that sense of being a free, equal Jew, we need to make sure it's not just us, but it's all around us. Okay, and then the afilu min hatamchui. And even if the person is so poor that their food comes from a soup kitchen, even that level of poverty, the beggar, walking down the street, that's the person that you make sure you give the bottle of wine or enough grape juice or whatever they need. So why is this statement at the beginning of this chapter?
So that we remember it.
Who jumped in? Just say your name because
Mike,
okay. Hi, Mike. Hi, doctor.
Mike.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the way this is written, if it were just telling the laws of Passover, you could just be inclusive and say all Jews. You didn't need to say anything about the poorest Jews. But at each point, it makes an effort to include the poor Jews, rather than just assume that they are being treated like everybody else. It's emphasizing that. And I think it's a measure of freedom to people who may be of limited means. On this night, they should feel free and equal in every possible way in the observance of the Seder.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you, Myra. From Florida, or are you home?
No, I'm still in Florida. I'll be home tomorrow.
Good. Michael, you jumping in to
Yeah.
have a conversation with Myra as if she's your chavruta.
I think the idea that at the beginning of the Seder, I mean, we're all still slaves, so we're all at the lowest. We all should be treated equally, and then ultimately at the end, we have the abilities, the special issues of being free. But I think at the beginning, we're all treated equally, and as equally as the lowest, starting at the lowest.
well, I agree with what
Wait,
everyone
maybe
said.
wealthy is the lowest. Michael Golden, your hand's been up, but you're on mute.
To me, it's a reflection of the fact it's mentioned so often and with such directness that it's saying that the villages in which they were living in had a lot of impoverished Jews, and that this was an issue that they had to deal with.
Yeah, yesh koach. Yes.
In addition to that, one thing we haven't mentioned yet is how do the poor people feel that they were not part of this? And this was the directions way of saying, yes, you are admitted, you are welcome here.
You are welcome. Not only are you welcome, but it is the person who has the 4 cups of wine's responsibility to make sure you have 4 cups as well. But Michael, both Michaels, thank you so much. This is their historical reality. This is a reminder that in Jewish history, maybe this is like America. America is like, hold on one second. I just need to make Susan host, and I can't do that while some things I can multitask, that I can. Give me 1 second. Thank you. Sorry. No, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So it is this interesting historical reality that, by the way, we read this text differently than my relatives in the shtetl did, because they were poor. Although they did own that nice samovar that's over there. See, nice grandma's samovar that came from Russia.
Wow.
I know, right? It came over on the boat. Youngest in each family. I know I can't have you over for Shabbos dinner because of COVID, but welcome to my home. Anyway, so that's the family samovar. But I am pretty certain that most of our families, certainly those living in the Palace Settlement and other places throughout Jewish history, this was their reality. Today, it is less our reality. Today, we do have people in our midst who are poor, and we have agencies to help deal with them, but it's not this. It's not the first thing you read. It's not as pervasive. You know where it is more pervasive? Where are there more poor Jews?
Africa.
What?
North Africa.
North Africa, somewhere else close to North Africa. How about Tel Aviv or any of these other, development towns in Israel? There's, a class of Jews who have less. And certainly in the United States, we know plenty of Jewish communities where there are folks who are individuals that have less, that are ani b'Yisrael. Ani there doesn't mean it means poor. But we also, we have smatterings in our town, just smatterings. But there are whole areas where there are impoverished Jews. And for them, I believe they read this text much differently than I probably would. Just something to think about. I think it's so crucial that they put it at the beginning. All right, any other questions or anything else you want to say about this text before we move on?
Rabbi, Susan, hi.
Susan, then Michelle Alpern. Then I'm going to give you an intro to the next Mishnah.
I'm getting the feeling as I read it, that what we just read, that this is really addressed to people who have money and telling them what to do. I don't think it's very sensitive to talk to poor people like this. It's more, to me, I take it as a directive for people who can give charity and can help others. I don't know.
So what the rabbis would say, I believe, is that we shouldn't be embarrassed by our economic situation, and even the person who is in need, this could be directed to them as well. And certainly there were definitely people who were living in those, there's lots of stories in the Talmud of people like sleeping in the Beit Midrash, in the study hall, because that's where they had to sleep, because they didn't have places. So you're right. And in that it is directed at those who can read it or hear it. But I think it was probably a little bit, those people would have been poor as well. Like if you were a scholar, didn't mean you had a university salary, or if you were a rabbi, these were not people who necessarily were not poor. They may have been poor as well. Okay, so there was someone, it was Michelle Alpern and then Ms. Grossman.
So one thing I was thinking, maybe I was thinking also from the perspective of sort of the wealthier, or what the community was obligated to do, but in a way, just providing 4 cups of stam, wine or grape juice is not really making people equal. So I wondered whether the Talmud questions that, the Gemara, or that because people have talked about, like,
yeah, it's code. No, you're absolutely right. It is code. Arba kosot is code for the meal.
But I
Rabbi?
mean, I'm talking about the quality of the meal, like, should everybody have the same quality of a meal, or should everybody have kind of a paltry meal that is, okay, you've done the 4 cups of wine, you've done the, matzah, and you've.
Well, I would say the brisket is discretionary, but Pesach, matzah, and Merow will not be, right? So yeah, it will get discussed, but it is this interesting idea that you guys came up with, which is we are leaving, thank you, Frank, we are leaving slavery. And at the time that we are leaving slavery, we're poor too. Yeah, you got to unmute.
Just wanted to add one thing. I think it's too easy for people who have the means to feel, okay, I've done something nice, I've given the poor something. And without realizing if it's sort of an inferior amount, it really isn't enough. So I think the quantity and the quality is meaningful. And I think it's very nice that this is included, because it's too simple, or it's too easy way out to just sort of take self-satisfaction by an amount that perhaps is not sufficient. And I think that's what it's saying. And I think that's very nice.
I agree with you. It's so nice to be able to say, we want to be able to provide. There are lots of poor Jews in New Jersey, in Pennsylvania, who actually live paycheck to paycheck. And then there are those Jews who raise larger families who may have less ability to provide nice. And hopefully that this is one of the holidays where we can provide, where our food pantries do provide a little better. It's not the larger issue of how to get people out of poverty. That's for another series. But yeah, I think it's nice. It's the right way to begin Seder, thinking about who has and that everyone has enough. The other thing I think about is, we think about maybe, will you invite people to your Seder? But not everyone wants to go to my Seder or your Seder. Maybe they want to do it for themselves. Maybe that's the dignity, being able to give them enough to do it the way they want. Okay. So here's a, by the way, dignity question. In my old food pantry, we used to give out turkeys for Thanksgiving. And then we found out that a ton of our clients were Haitian immigrants, and they didn't want turkey. They really didn't want it. They wanted ham, or they wanted fish.
Yeah.
We started saying, wait, why should we get all these turkeys? Let's just get gift cards and let people have the dignity to go out and buy what they want. Have that sort of sense of dignity. Easier for the pantries and more dignified. Let a person buy what they want. Which, I always say, when you're donating to a food pantry, always call them and ask what they want, but they always want the color green. So you can always give money and they'll buy what they need. Okay, we are going to now break up into study groups. You may or may not know your study people. We tried to do a little bit so that you might be on somewhat of an equal level. This is open to everyone. I want to tell you what you're about to study. We're going to take 10 minutes away. I know that seems like a lot, but it's not. Again, I put questions down. Those are guide questions. The question should be what comes up for you. I think it's really important. If you are a Hebrew speaker and there are Hebrew speakers in your group, read it in Hebrew, hear it. If not, read it in English all the way through, then go back and start dissecting it. So this, I want to give you just a few cool things about this. If you look on page 2 at the top, I put the questions, the bottom of page 1, but mazgu lo kos rishon. So it says they poured the wine for the first cup, but actually what we understand is that means somebody came and poured the wine, meaning they took the grape mixture and poured it into a glass or a flask, a cup, and then they poured water and they mixed it. So pouring the wine means an attendant, a servant, the woman of the house, whoever it is coming over to who? The leader of the Seder, and pouring the wine and mixing it for them. That is not something you need to know for the Mishnah. It's just like incidental sort of fun facts about the time of the Mishnah. Someone's going to be there. They stored their wine. So it was more like, how do you say assis? So it's concentrated. Yeah, it's concentrated. And then they would actually pour it. So we're going to hear about what happens when this first cup of wine is poured and what kind of blessings there are. And then you're going to read the third one as well. Does anyone have any questions? For the third one, I didn't put questions because I want you to ask the questions. So Se'omad, as it says later in the Haggadah. Hope you have a Haggadah near you. You might want to look at it later. Se'omad, go out and learn. And Suzanne's going to put you in breakout rooms. We'll see you in 10 minutes or 8 minutes. So I am going to run to the ladies' room.
I thought it was a non-gendered room at your house. Spicy. Oh, right.
What's good? What are you eating?
I'm eating rice and beans.
Oh, right. You said you were making rice and beans. How are they?
Delicious, spicy. Do you like spicy?
No, I'm not a spice person. I mean, I like spice. I don't like hot. Do you know what I mean? So I do like hot spice, just not hot.
Got it.
But Yeah. How do you think this is going? Looks like people
Oh,
are
it's going very well.
good.
And different people are chiming in.
I know, I'm happy about that.
Yeah, I think it takes folks a little bit to get comfortable with the material.
Oh my God, it's hard material.
It is. And this is just our third class, and
But it's fun. It's fun material.
oh, it's fascinating. So fascinating. Oh, so my family's Erev Pesach snack was potato, egg, all mashed together, and grimace.
Oh, yum. Yum.
Dangerous, but yeah, that was the traditional lunch in my house.
Oh, lunch, right.
Yeah.
But we put out salatim, all kinds of salads and soup and salad during the whole Seder because I don't want people to be hungry.
Right.
Say they want to leave.
For that, I did the Italian vegetable platter with the
an antipasti.
Well, a dipping sauce of like anchovies and also,
Nice. Well,
yeah.
I do for karpas, if they're in season, I do artichokes with dipping sauce.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So, I wanted to tell you, how much more time do we have?
We have about 4 minutes.
Okay, so this is the way I've done the cheesecake for.
Okay.
So I learned this at Kibbutz Torah when I was 18. They would make cheesecake at night, and then I brought it back to my shul. And then the person at my first shul, who was like you, who did all the cooking for the shul, it's a married couple, Goldbergs, and they sort of came up with a way to do it to make it not arduous. So we buy like the pre-baked crusts and put areas out on tables, long tables, with all the ingredients already measured out.
Okay.
So we also went and bought at like the dollar store, I would buy them, or Five Below, the hand mixers that go like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So you'd have an area, and you'd have, we would do a few crusts that were gluten-free for the people who needed that. And then what would be fun is there was on another table, you could mix in, oh, I want to put peanut butter in it. Oh, I want to put more sour cream in it, or I want to put cherries in it. And on top, some toppings, blueberry cherries, whatever. Some people would do designs. Chocolate chip is a good one. Sometimes we get little ones so people can make little individual ones, or just big pies and then serve them. And that's it. You would make one as a family, but so you'd come, and pre-prepared is a paper cup with the sugar and the cheese and all the stuff out, and it's dump and stir and done. And then while you're studying, you smell them baking.
Right. See, I can easily do that. My issue comes with, it takes different times to do the pizza and the cheesecake.
So I think we eat the pizza, we get pre-made pizza that we eat, or pizza bagels or whatever. Okay. While we're having our second class, but we make the cheesecake to eat at the end of the night.
That's fine. But I can also do it so that we have all the pizza stuff out and before the next, I guess, Torah parade is what they're thinking. So we do that, have the Torah parade, and when that's done, the pizza's ready to eat, and then we do bake the cheesecakes.
Yeah, I think because not everyone will do it, because there'll be some people who are like, I don't do that. And there'll be some people who that's the best part of the night, right?
Okay. So we can pick one, and I'll let Linda, I'll give her all this information and let her decide if she wants to do the pizzas. You want to do the cheesecake?
No, I just think cheesecake's more traditional.
Okay.
So tell me what you think, because we can always buy the one we're not doing.
True.
You have to think about which one people will come out better, which one people will like, which is more interesting. There's the kitty cat.
Yes, so that's Finn and somebody else is around. Yeah, they're.
Connie's right here. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You're right there.
Okay, so I'm gonna broadcast a message that we have a minute left.
Or yeah, just give them 30 seconds. It's fine. I'd rather they.
Okay. But we can figure the rest of that out.
Yeah, I want to talk to Goldberg's.
Well, yeah, I've taught cooking classes, so I know how to portion it out. So I'm good with that. So
yeah, it's kind of fun.
It is fun.
Element.
Yes. Whatever. Yes, definitely.
But also, if there's something else cheese that you'd rather make, tell us about that.
Pizzas are a little hard. That's what I'd rather have.
Cheesecake is better. I think we should just think about if the no bake are better than the bake.
I don't know, but I'll look into no bake. There's a recipe in the Times. I'll look into that. I'll look into that recipe.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So I close it and it says they have another minute. So yeah, but I'll look into that. Well, but you want them to smell it.
No, but we might be outside because you might.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Hello. How are you? Oh, I can't hear you.
I didn't intend to leave the meeting, the breakout room so quickly.
Oh, you wanted to hang out with Rabbi. I know that, David.
Yeah. It's like, it's good for me to be able to meet people because when I see them in shul or wherever, everyone has a mask on.
That's true.
During a pandemic to come somewhere and like not know what people look like.
Yes. It's a pleasure to meet you, Rabbi Merow. I think it's the first time we've met. David Lieberman.
Why does it say Mark? Who's Mark?
It's Marcy. It's my wife's name. And I didn't yet edit it correctly.
All good. All good.
It's her computer.
We won't tell her.
So is everyone back? Welcome back. Were you done? Was it too much time? Right.
No, not even close.
No.
To done.
So who has running through their head? Is that the tune you use or one of the other 700 tunes? Okay, so I know some people have to leave at 8. That's fine. I have to talk to people at 8:15 because I plan the ufruf that we're having on Shabbos. Yay, Jewish stuff happening at shul. We have a bar mitzvah and an ufruf this week in shul. So I have my trusty little United Synagogue Haggadah here, and just to keep open, but this is probably a debate you know about. So who wants to read the Hebrew? Anyone want to?
I'll read.
For that.
מזגו כוס ראשון, בית שמאי אומרים, מברך על היום, ואחר כך מברך על היין. ובית הלל אומרים, מברך על היין, ואחר כך מברך על היום.
So, very short, right? Short little Mishnah there. First, who is mazgulo? When it says lo, the Hebrew, they mixed for him. Who's him in this case?
Host.
The host, yeah. It's not the egalitarian world where, everyone got their own cup. We hope everyone gets their own cup, but certainly the host had someone mix his cup for him. And what do you already know from your being Jews about Shammai and Hillel and who's going to win this argument?
Hillel.
Yeah.
Hillel.
Right. Hillel's going to win this argument. So what about Hillel? We learned that Hillel wins more arguments because he tells Shammai's view first. So what's the question? What's the underlying question that they're asking? One can raise their hand.
This is Fran, Rabbi. This didn't come up in our discussion, but is it a difference over which is more important? Whether the festival or, the day is more important than the beginning of the Seder?
It
I
is
mean, go
about,
ahead.
right. It is about what is gonna, well, part of it is about what takes precedence. Sure. Yeah.
And is it because we usually start, at least with Shabbat, we usually start that, well, we do the candles, but my understanding, and I may be wrong, is that it's the blessing of the wine that is really significant for the starting of the,
Right. But maybe they learn that from here.
they get it from here.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we know this from here. So what's the question? And what does it tell us about Kiddush? Which you may be like, of course I know this, but what does it tell us about Kiddush? Kiddush is not Borei Priagafen. That is not Kiddush. That is, what is that?
Blessing over the wine.
Blessing over the wine. Kiddush is the blessing over the actual day. Right? You're sanctifying the day, which is why there's two different brachot. So it's interesting because we'll hear later like why each of them makes these arguments, but why might the blessings for the day and the wine, why are they different? Why aren't they the same bracha?
Well, it's first thanking God for the holiday and the observance of the holiday. And then you're talking about individually products, the things that we use to eat and to indulge ourselves on the holiday.
Yeah, I mean, it's the flip order for ending up, well, Shammai is your order, Hillel's the flip order, but they are two different kinds of brachot. So Rabbinic Judaism breaks in, this one is a bracha over something that you're about to ingest. God forbid, chas v'chalila, a Jew would put something in their mouth to eat without saying a blessing before it. So it's al hayayin, right? On the wine. Janet, yeah.
So they're actually two different mitzvot.
Yes.
They're two different mitzvot, so you need two different brachot.
Yes. And the same is true with Shabbat.
But why is one more important than the other?
What makes one more important than
Yeah,
the
but I
other?
don't know why you would say it over the wine first and then the day.
I don't know if one is more important or not important, but as you see, you don't drink that wine till the end of both blessings because it is actually the blessing over the wine that affects the second bracha. Don't say that second bracha without. So what do you do if you don't have wine? What do you do if it's Shabbat or a holiday and you don't have wine, but you want to bless the day?
You can do a motzi.
Yeah, you make kiddush over the challah, or you make kiddush over the
grape juice.
Right. I mean, if you have neither, you can actually make kiddush over bread or matzah. Instead of gafen, it's hamotzi lachem min haaretz, and then you do the paragraph where you bless the day in the absence of wine. So why did I have to ask this question?
Is this the first place or the only place that they tell us that we're saying a blessing over the wine? Or is that mentioned in other?
Well, for Shabbat, it's going to be mentioned for Shabbat as well, but for Pesach, for here, for the holiday, why do they have to tell us this? Because this is the first time you're going to see the outline of the Seder, and you're seeing it right here. Kadesh or Chatzis Kadesh, right here, beginning of the Seder. Anyone have anything that you guys learned from each other you could teach other people when you were having your discussion? I'm going to go to about 8:10, by the way.
Gotta go. Let's see.
We're going to continue next time, Fran and Frank. So anyone have something interesting from their own discussion that you could add? No one? You were there for a while. Nothing that you want to jump in with? Okay. Yeah, Ellen?
I don't know if it has anything to do with, it's not Passover, but I was comparing Havdalah. We say Borei Pri Hagafna, but we don't drink. And then we go through the whole ceremony and say the whole blessing and don't drink the wine till we're done. So I thought it was very similar.
Totally parallel. Totally parallel because you're blessing the end of that day. You
Right.
don't drink wine until after Hamatzio ben Kodesh L'chol. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Should we move on then to the next Mishnah? Why did they put it first? Because it's the beginning of the Seder, and we don't know to do it this way until the Mishnah tells us to. Because this is where we get our how to do the, and there's some, okay, yes, that's fine, Myra. See you later. Okay. A Tana. A Tana is a rabbi from the Mishnah period, or the name of my dog. So, although her name is
Tana.
yes, it's the name of my dog, or the rabbi from the Torah. So if you are a rabbi and you lived up until the year 200, you're a Tana. If you're a rabbi and you lived up to the year 200, you lived where? What parcel of land in the world?
Israel.
Yeah, you lived in ancient Israel, Palestine. Yep. Okay, so I love this Mishnah. Who wants to read it, either in English or in Hebrew? And how many of you got confused when you put on the Seder plate and it says Chazeret? You're like, what's that? Because it doesn't really translate it. Okay, so let's, Avi, you're going to be our Tana today and read for us?
Okay, sure.
הביאו לפניו
הביאו לפניו מטבל בחזרת, עד שמגיע לפרפרת הפת. הביאו לפניו מצה וחזרת וחרוסת ושני תבשילים, אף על פי שאין חרוסת מצווה.
I'm going to pick up Gabby's.
Should I keep going?
Yeah.
רבי אליעזר ברבי צדוק אומר מצווה, ומקדש היו מביאים לפניו גופו של פסח.
Okay, so does that, before I jump in and describe this Mishnah, anyone have anything they want to say about it? Yeah, Neil Litt.
Well, the question that I had, and I really don't know the answer to this, is this descriptive or prescriptive?
Yeah, right. We don't have the answer to that. Yeah. I mean,
I'm in good company.
We know this is the first time it's put on paper. That we know. And we know that, look, everything about the Mishnah is both descriptive and prescriptive. Everything about the Mishnah is, well, we've been doing since the time of the Pharisees and since Akiva and since Hillel and Shammai. And now that the temple's been destroyed 130 years before, so they're kind of getting it into their skulls that they're not rebuilding it. So they have to rebuild Judaism, I firmly believe. Was everyone doing it? I don't know. I wish we knew. We don't know.
The other interesting thing we had in our discussion was that, is it prescriptive? Is it a description or prescriptive? And that what ties into that too is these unnamed people brought it. So who are they and how are they motivating and pushing the discussion? It seems very mysterious. It isn't, are we saying that the women do they hold the tradition? Are they driving everything? Is that where our tradition, our knowledge are based? It's just very mysterious, right?
Right, and so it's such an interesting thing when you think about issues of gender here specifically because, well, if you would assume that it is the women who are driving this part of it, except it doesn't work in many ways because for 2 weeks out of every month, the menstruating woman can't hand her husband his food and can't mix specifically in Masechet Nida. You're going to learn that you can't mix a cup of wine before she's gone to the mikveh. So it does beg the question, who is doing this? Yeah. So, there are some commentaries. I was working with 3 translations today. I had like Mishnah from, it's called Talam, like a teach Mishnah thing. And then I had the thing on Safaria, which I just too much. But then I was using this one, which is kind of what you would use in school. It's by Philip Blackman, Judaica Press. It's really old, but it's actually a better translation than what's online, which is why I wanted to change them. And so some of the translations say attendance, which then flies in the face of the earlier first Mishnah, right? I mean, that assumes that there are attendants. It's not so old. It's only from 1990. I guess I haven't had the book that long. Okay, so yeah, it's the Heviu they brought to him. I could imagine, and I've heard the discussion, that a Seder wasn't in every house. Like some people don't like shul Seders, but that there were much more of a sense of a communal Seder. Maybe just the men went to. Maybe they just went to the beginning part. I don't know. Or they had everyone together, but that there was a class of folks who were still serving them. I think we don't know. I do think it is interesting to think about the different experiences of people at Seder, the ones who serve versus the ones who don't serve. Like who leads the Seder and who makes sure all that happens. And I believe now in our egalitarian age, it's different in every family. And interesting because it opens the story up to more people. All right, but let's get to more of the, I would say more of the meat, but it's actually the vegetable. Let's get to more of the vegetable. So I'm not funny. I know I'm not funny. I'm like funny like my dad was, not funny. Okay, they brought vegetables before him. And he dips the chatzeret, and I put in question mark lettuce. That's what most people translate as like romaine. Before he reaches, what a great word, parperet hapat. Even if you don't know what it means, you have to be happy with the alliteration. So what it actually means is either dessert or an appetizer. So it means something with bread that is small. Something with bread that is small. Before
bread.
What?
Isn't this Pesach? What's with bread?
I know, but pat is bread. So pat means bread. So what do you think it means if it's not bread?
Is it some form of unleavened bread, but not matzah?
I mean, that's right. That's what it had. Well, it can't be leaven, but it has to be some form of bread. Pat always means bread. Okay. So they brought before him or her they bring before him and her all the vegetables, but they don't name them here. They just say they bring them all. And you dip. By the way, what do you dip in?
Salt water and harezes.
Right. So it's unclear from the actual wording here. But yes, you're dipping in the salt water. Your salt water. And then later, of course, they become, the only way this makes sense is if it's an appetizer. And so that's like, what do you use for your first dip? What do you guys use for your first dip?
Salt water.
Parsley.
Yeah, what vegetable do you use?
Parsley.
Parsley.
Parsley. Yeah, lettuce.
Let me ask you why.
Potatoes.
Yeah, good. Who said potatoes? Good little Eastern European answer, right? Why'd they use potatoes in Eastern Europe, in Russia?
They had
didn't
them.
have parsley.
They had, right? They didn't have the greens. So, well, Suzanne knows what I use in my house to dip. I don't really like dip parsley in water, do you? No, in my house, if you come for Seder, we dip artichokes. Get something really good for karpas. An appetizer of bread. So you dip the chatzeret first, and then eventually you get to the part where you dip the bitter herbs, which were eaten after the matzah. You know what this is, right? What's this? What do we call this?
Merow.
The Hillel sandwich.
Yeah, it's maror and then the beginning of the Hillel sandwich. They brought before him matzah and chazeret and charotzet and at least 2 cooked dishes. What's that? Do you have that at your Seder?
No.
No, that has left our Seder. Or that's later.
Well, we have an egg and a shank bone. Those are cooked.
That's what I was gonna say. They're cooked.
The shank bone, but yes,
Yeah.
they eat the egg, but you wouldn't eat the shank bone. I think the most interesting part here is that this was the practice. Although eating charoset is not a mitzvah, but merely a custom. Right? It says in the Hebrew, af al pi she'ein charoset mitzvah. What's not a mitzvah on your Seder plate? Charoset. How would it be if you had a Seder without the charoset? Yeah, no way. That's the best part. It's like the apple pie of the whole night, and
Right.
fun part. It's the part that you get the kids to make, and it tastes good, and it's so interesting. Is merely a custom that's put in by the modern commentator, but the Mishnah itself says, look, you can have charoset, and people have it, but it's not a mitzvah. So in that sense, by the way, Neil, I would think it's descriptive here. Not a mitzvah to have a charoset, but people were doing it, so they talked about it.
But Rabbi Eliezer ben Tzadok says it is a mitzvah.
So by the way, Rabbi Eliezer ben Tzadok, there are two different ones. They're 2 generations apart. So I'm just letting you know. I don't know which one it is, but one's in the 2nd and one's in the 4th generation. And Rabbi Eliezer says, okay, it's a mitzvah. Not really a mitzvah though. Okay.
He's
What
got the last word.
Yes, you're right. But you'll see a little bit. You have to dip something. And then in the next mitzvah, you're going to see, right, the 3 things that you have to describe on Passover, and charoset isn't one of them. I think it becomes a mitzvah. And I think what you see here is a growth in practice, that it was a minhag and then it became a mitzvah. Which is why I think that this Eliezer must be the later one. I think it grew.
But we don't say a bracha over it.
Correct. And isn't that like disturbing?
It is.
What's the bracha over this? It's a bracha of the continuation of Jewish history, right? At 8:15, I'm going to get this phone call. I'm going to tell the bride and groom that I'm going to have to call them back in a minute because I can't not end them. I can't have to keep doing this. And in the period of when the temple stood, Paschal lamb, right? So uva migdash hayu, when the temple stood, they brought gufo shel pasach. They actually brought the Paschal lamb. What are you not allowed to eat on Passover?
Lamb.
Correct. So the only way you can eat lamb on Passover is if you I went to a couple of my professors to talk about this. You have to, if you're going to eat lamb at Pesach, you have to say to your guests, I want to make sure you understand this is not the Pesach. I'm not trying to intimate that my house is actually the temple. I just wanted you to have good lamb chops. But it is certainly minhag that you don't make lamb on Pesach until, when would you make lamb on Pesach?
When the temple is built.
Yeah.
So what do we know so far about the Seder? We know you have to have pork, make sure people who are poor can have a Seder. What else do we know?
Bless the wine before the day.
Yep, bless the wine and then bless the day. That's the kiddush, both of them. And then we know that we have to dip a vegetable into salt water. And then they are guessing. Oh, and then you bring charoset, but it's still a discussion whether it's a mitzvah or not. That'll happen later in the Talmud. They'll tell you what it is. And they're also remembering, they're reminiscing. Oh, you remember when there used to be a temple that stood 130 years ago? There, they wouldn't just bring the parsley with a little bit of salt water. There, they would bring, let me just decline this. I am just ending a class, so I will call you back in like 5 minutes, okay? Okay, great. Bye.
Bye.
The actual bride and groom from this coming Shabbos. Okay, so you see a little bit, I think, of their nostalgia here, right? You know, when the temple stood, we used to also serve lamb, but not now because we're still pining for the temple. Okay, so you did 2 and 3. I just want to give you an intro to 4 because we're going to do this next time. But if you want to look at it, maybe you want to call apart someone you studied with this week. So where are we up to in the Seder? Anyone know? Anyone know where we're up to?
Well, it says here the second cup of wine.
Yeah, so that's the heart of the Seder, the second cup of wine. We're going to learn about what we call the 4 questions. So as homework, if you want, look through these 4 questions and see how they differ from ours. Does anyone have any comments, good, bad, indifferent? Anything they want to say?
Yeah, when we were studying together in our session, there was so much to discuss about number 2 that we never got to number 3.
Right.
So
Okay.
it was interesting to me how many questions you can come up when you're studying together. So I can appreciate the length of the discussions they must have had when they were trying to figure out all these parts.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Also, you have a sense of you're going to figure out more stuff than I can tell you. I mean, that's why we learn in Chavruta. So come next time. And if your Chavruta wasn't great for you, let us know. We'll change them. If not, we may keep them the same. But we're going to spend that time in Chavruta, and I'm going to see if I think next time I can get to each group. And we're going to get a little bit more of Pesach, and then we're going to end with a piece of the Gemara on this as well. Anyone have other questions, comments? Tonight was more about the brain. Tomorrow is more about the heart. So if you've never done spa for the soul, I invite you to come and try a different part of your neshama, of your soul. We'll be doing some sharing and some chanting of Psalms and some new tunes that you may or may not know. Some from my Nava Tehillah teachers and some just that I know are made up and some that I got from other people. It's about 45 minutes to an hour, probably about an hour of being together and sharing online. It's a great way to have a, as I call it, spa for your soul. That's tomorrow from 8 to 9. And I thank you so much. I thank Suzanne. Let's all thank Suzanne for.
And great.
And Neil, you're starting a new tractate in your class tomorrow, or a new sugya?
A new sugya.
What's sugya?
We're going to be looking at the customs of mourning from Moed Katan.
Wonderful. That's great. So everyone, tis kula mitzvot, do lots of mitzvot, and the first one being limud Torah, learning Torah. And if I haven't met you in person or had a conversation, please do what Michelle was able to do, which is email me, or I'll email you, or let me know if you'd like to sit outside, take a walk, have a conversation, get to know each other by Zoom, in person or not. And thank you so much. I'm going to go talk to the bride and groom.
Night.
Lila
Tov.
Lila Tov. And I hope that I put Kadesh or into your head, and also made all of us think about what our tzedakah donations to Jewish food pantries should be before Pesach, so that our food pantries can serve people in the way that they're supposed to serve people. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Want to do that?